everyone. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I made an 1860s dress for a Civil War Halloween ball. And I didn't really do 1860s, so this ended up being like the only 1860s dress I have in my closet. The dress turned out great for the evening. I wore it one time and it's sat unused and unloved in the costume closet ever since. So now that all of our spring and summer events have been canceled because of stay-at-home orders, I figured it was a good time to revisit this dress because I wanted to actually give it like a daytime option for a long time, and I've never gotten around to it because I always had other sewing that took precedence. So now it is time to finally revisit this dress, and I had plans to do like a Garibaldi blouse and maybe a Swiss waist to go with it. And then a fabric miracle happened. When I first made this dress, the fabric that I used had already been in my fabric stash for about 10 years. And when I started planning out the daytime options for the remake, I had no hopes of ever finding this fabric again. It's been 15, 16 years since I purchased it originally. I didn't think it existed anymore. I was on Etsy and I, on a whim, just kind of looked up black plaid taffeta, and there it was. It wasn't exactly the same fabric. It was a slightly smaller scale, and it didn't have the silver metallic stripe running through it, but otherwise it looked practically identical. So I bought up everything that she had. I figured that if it didn't match when it came in person and it was too obvious, then I could at least have enough yardage to make another dress. But when it came in, it was practically perfect. So now I have big plans beyond just a blouse and a waist. I'm going to take the dress back a decade to the 1850s and go fully frilly, fringy, over the top frou-frou on it. I am very excited to do this project now, and I'm hoping that since I am in self-isolation for at least the next 5 to 7 days, that I can get this project finished in that time. So let's see what we can get done.
After a bit of Pinterest research, I decided on a waist-length bodice with large, multi-layered pagoda sleeves. Before I could start on the bodice, I had to assess the current state of the skirt and see if there were any alterations or repairs that I needed to make. There was about a 4-inch gap in the waistline that needed to be addressed, as well as no placket or closure. There was also an odd amount of fullness in the front of the skirt that would need to be evened out.
Now that I've gotten the waistband off of it, I can definitely see why there was so much fullness in the front. The gathers here are really densely packed, just really stuffed together. And in the back of the skirt, it's much more loosely gathered. Almost barely gathered at all. So I'm going to move some of this fullness into the back of the skirt so it'll lay a bit better when I'm wearing it.
First, I tried to simply redistribute the gathering towards the back of the skirt, and then I discovered I had knotted off the gathering threads at irregular intervals. I had to take out the stitching entirely and regather the entire waistline. Before I reattached the waistband, I made a new waistband and a placket out of the new plaid material. To make sure my gathers were even this time, I divided both the skirt and the waistband into quarters. I then matched up those marks and gathered the skirt to fit the waistband. This made sure that the gathers were evenly distributed all around the waist of the skirt, and that I would have equal fullness all around. I then stitched on the waistband. I sewed it on right sides together, folded it over to the inside with the seam allowance pressed up, and then top stitched from the front to secure the inside edge of the band. And with that, the alterations to the skirt were finally complete, and I could move on to patterning out the bodice. To make my initial pattern, I just took a couple of big rectangles of plain white muslin and started pinching and folding and darting wherever I thought I needed to take in some extra fabric.
Alright, I tried on the first mock-up, and there are definitely a few things that I need to change. Not quite enough space under the arm for my actual arm to move, and it looks like it's actually about 3 inches too short in the actual look. I'm going to have to make the adjustments to this mock-up and then cut out another muslin and see if that one will fit a little bit better. And that one I'm actually going to probably try on over my corset, because that's what I'll be wearing once I actually get this thing done. So yeah, more mock-ups in the future. So as you can see, the waistline on my mannequin and the waistline on my actual physical body are quite different. My mannequin's waist is right about here, and my physical waist is down here at the bottom edge of this pattern. So I think I'm gonna have to do is do a full try on with the hoop and the skirt to see how that changes my waistline and where it actually sits, and then trim off or keep the length that I've added to this pattern. So more fitting, more mock-ups. Yay. So I actually think, yeah, mock-up number 4 is the winner. Hooray! Now I can actually sew fabric. Yay! Well, the front fits pretty well now, but the back is really loose, like really, really loose. I'm gonna take about 5/8 of an inch off of these back seams on either side. Let's see if that helps. Ow. I have spared myself a pen. It looks way better. So that's, unfortunately, that's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to take those seams out, and then I'm gonna have to take out that 5/8 of an inch and then put everything back together. I don't wanna take it apart again. Ah. I realized that by simply pinching the seams, it was going to completely disrupt the pattern on the back. The plaid would no longer be matching across the seams, so what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to cut out a new side back piece entirely, so I'm excited. New pieces are in. One more fitting, I hope. I think this is fitting number, Lord, I don't even know. Why? Why is there so much space here? What is going on with my back? Okay, so I adjusted the side seam, and the back fits now the way it should fit. It's just that now my side seam is sort of slanted towards the back. And at this point, I've done 4 mock-ups and 7 fittings, and I'm really tired of tweaking this bodice, and I'm just going to move on, because if I don't,
that I'm going to be endlessly cutting out new pieces for this bodice, and I really want to move on and get to making the sleeves and putting on the decorations and finishing this project up. So I'm just going to have wonky side seams, and I'm okay with that.
The next thing I needed to do was put in the bust pads. The drop shoulder look of the 1850s and 60s created a hollow in the armpit, which they would fill with padding so the bust would remain smooth instead of having wrinkles in the armpit. I marked the general shape of the hollow with pins while I was wearing the bodice, then cut the pieces out of quilt batting and muslin and sewed them together into pads. I then stitched the pads to the bodice lining by hand. The bodice trim consisted of diagonal pieces of black taffeta that I edged with this lace fringe combo that I've actually found at Joann's of all places. Looking at surviving 1850s bodices, it's a little unusual to have a contrasting color for the bodice trim. Usually they would be made out of the same material as the rest of the bodice, but I did find a couple of examples where they did have contrasting colors, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Once I was satisfied with the placement of the trim on the front and back, I hand-stitched it in place. Because nothing on this bodice can go right the first time, the sleeves were, of course, an additional exercise in frustration. It took a total of 3 attempts to get a pattern that worked correctly for me. Each subsequent layer got a little bit shorter and a little bit wider so that they could be gathered into the arm side and have some fullness. Each sleeve layer was also lined fully in black taffeta and was decorated along all the outer edges with a black taffeta band. To finish up the sleeves, I basted all of them together at the top edge, and then I finished off the inside edge with a small whip stitch. I then hand sewed the sleeves into the arm side, which was a bit tricky because there were a lot of layers of fabric and that needle did not want to go through.
We had ourselves a nice little storm this morning, and it's nice and cool and kind of dreary and lovely, and it is the perfect day to finish this dress. All I have left to do today is the front closure and the neckline, so once those are done, this dress will be complete and we can finally check this dress off the list. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that if nothing else you took away that even if a project doesn't come together at first, that if you make 300 mock-ups, eventually you'll get something that works. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to hit that like button below, and if you want to see more sewing adventures, costume events, and other historical costuming goodness, please be sure to hit the subscribe button too. I'll see you next time.